A very good evening and welcome to this week's election debate. You're watching the Watchdog. Our focus this evening is the city of Cape Town, and that's where 231 seats are up for grabs in this election. As things stand, the DA is by far the biggest party with 154 seats. The ANC comes a distant second with 56. The EFF has 7, followed by the ACDP with 3. And there's about 9 other political parties that form part of this council presently. Now, representing the DA in this debate is mayoral candidate Jordan Hill-Lewis. From the ANC, we have Fiona Abrams. Melikaya Klego represents the EFF, and Grant Haskin is from the ACDP. Welcome to you all, and I'm going to give each one of you a minute for making opening remarks, and tell us what's important for your party in this election.
Shall I start?
Jordan?
Thank you very much, Vuyo. It's lovely to be with you and the colleagues this evening. Vuyo, of all the political parties, hundreds running in South Africa, we've seen all their posters everywhere. There are really only 2 who have established a firm and clear track record in government. One of those parties, the ANC, has established a track record of corruption and chaos and destruction wherever it has governed anywhere in South Africa. The other, the DA, the party I represent, is the only political party in the country who has established a track record of progress in the right direction over time wherever we govern. And that's something to be proud of. And that really is the choice facing voters in this election. If you want your town, your city, your community to go forward, if you want to secure your future, then the DA is the only party that has proven over time that it is able to do that. No corruption, clean audits, getting the basics right, and now we have the opportunity to go further in Cape Town. Thank
Fiona?
you so much.
Jordan has just set the stage with the city being in good governance, which is not true. We have a city that is two-tailed. We have the affluent areas that has exceptional amenities, they have excellent services. But what about the other tail of the city? The pro-poor, we have informal settlements living in Surits. We have old ladies that goes and buy electricity and their water debts is being deducted. The real issue here is Vuyo. It's not the clean audits, it's the fact that it's not reflected underground. It's not reflected within our communities. We don't see that clean audits giving service delivery. We have high water use bills. Simply, it's not affordable to stay in the city of Cape Town. To be poor in the city of Cape Town is actually a crime. And that is how the city is treating our communities. So he's right. They've set a good track record by abusing the poor.
Your minute is up. Melikaya?
No, thanks, Vuyo. We are talking about bringing the budget for the poor. Because the budget that has always been implemented currently and previously in the city of Cape Town, it only concentrated in the leafy suburbs and ensured that all services are delivered there. That is why they've got clean audits, because they are aimed at ensuring. Because if they were implementing any budget where it's supposed to be going to the poor, in the likes of Philip, you go to Mfule in Kailicha, you go to Manenberg, it's a total different story. Then they will always have a clean audit because of that. So if you do not talk about the special planning, where our people are congested, and that's where there is high crime, where our people are killing each other because there are no roads where the police would drive, there's no roads where the ambulances can go in. So the EFF is definitely going to look at those things to reverse the apartheid special planning that the DA is currently serving, that is serving white and rich people.
Grant?
Thank you, Vuyo. Good evening, and good evening, colleagues. The ACDP simple message to the ratepayers of Cape Town is that if you want to live in a city where you can go to work freely and safely, and it doesn't cost an arm and a leg to get there, where the traffic is sorted, where safety and security is cared for, where you are cared for, your families are cared for, where you can pay your rates accounts every month knowing that you can afford it, then you should be voting for the ACDP. If you don't want to live in a city that discriminates against people based on their vaccination status, then you should be voting for the ACDP. All these other parties are going to exclude people based on their vaccination status. The ACDP is saying, we want to respect your choice. We want to be sure that you can get services no matter who you are, no matter what religion you are, no matter what your faith, no matter what your gender. We want to make sure that you're going to get quality services. Thank you.
Let's start then with the issue of audits and the management of finances in this city, Jordan. I mean, for 4 consecutive years, I mean, between 2011 and 2015 or thereabout, Cape Town was indeed the poster child of good handling of books, everything balanced, and you indeed led by example, to take from what you said in your opening remarks. Then came 2016, 2017. Things changed. The city started regressing. According to the Auditor General, there were breakdowns in preventative controls. Contract management was of concern. There were contraventions of supply management prescripts, and there's a long list. What happened? Where did the wheels come off?
Well, Vuyo, I'm so glad that you raised that. In the DA, we are absolutely committed to spending every cent of public money honestly and transparently. And we know that every rand that we spend comes from a member of the public who pays us and expects a service in return. And so it has to be well done. And so you will know that there was political turmoil with the former mayor of Cape Town at the time, and that contributed to the party's lack of confidence in the former mayor and contributed to the action that was taken against her. That is exactly why people can trust that regardless of what any party says about the misappropriation of funds or the misspending of public funds, there is only one party that actually does something about it. Regardless of what my colleagues say about renewal, there is only one party that can say when there is any untoward behavior, when there's any unacceptable behavior, it is dealt with firmly and clearly by the DA. And that's why the public can have the peace of mind that they are getting what they pay for, that nothing is being stolen, nothing is going missing.
That can be true.
Before, I'm going to give you a chance, but I can't resist this. I mean, you are holding Patricia de Lille responsible for your regression, yet you keep on saying or reminding South Africans that where the DA is in charge, things happen. You know, so when do you take responsibility, and when do you, make other people, individuals, responsible for when things go wrong?
Oh no, the DA as a party is responsible for everything that happens under our government.
So you should then take responsibility for, not blame that individual.
The point I'm making, Vuyo, is that look at the political parties' rhetoric on dealing with corruption and malfeasance, and look at those who actually take action. That doesn't mean that we abjecting ourselves from responsibility. It means that we are taking action. When we see a problem, there is firm action. Now here you've got a party where, with digital vibes, millions going missing, 15 million rand on some ramshackle stadium in the Eastern Cape. There is no action on those things, and yet we hear the talk of renewal this evening. There is no renewal. If you want a party that sticks to its values, that sticks to its word, it is the DA.
Vuyo, just quickly, I need to disagree. And please don't bring national government in here. Vuyo has started by saying this is a debate
talking
for
about
the city
Cape
of
Town.
Cape Town. So let's stick to the city of Cape Town. What about Councillor Nora Gross? She's in court and yet she's still high on your list. So how do you deal with corruption? At least the ANC is truthful about it. We are doing something about it. We don't sweep it under the carpet like the DA is doing it. Why then is the DA under the top five of corruption allegations of all the municipalities? I don't believe that the DA is taking charge of, they don't take responsibility. Now they want to blame the former mayor. She was the mayor of the DA. She was not the mayor of herself. And if we look for you, if I can continue, we were speaking about the budget. You were speaking about the clean audits. As I've alluded earlier, it doesn't reflect on the ground. Look at all the housing projects that has been rolled over for the past 15 years. I can make examples. I can even give it to you if you don't know it. Kanonkop in Atlantis has been rolled over for 15 years. Let's look at Belha Pentek housing, has been rolled over. Bontewil infill housing, Makassar, Beacon Hill, Beacon Valley, Harare and Kailitsa. So it has been rolled over for the past 15 years. So how do you blame Patricia for the last, while she was the mayor? Take responsibility. You only cater for the leafy suburbs. That is what you do, and that is the honest truth.
Melika?
Indeed, it's true what Fiona just said. We've got a very good example of Nora Grass, who has just been corruption alleged, and is being protected by the current mayor and the entire mayoral committee, and the DA for that matter, because she's hooked up and linked up with the DA funders. And the DA has put her top of its list, which is a clear sign that the DA is indeed protecting corruption, as long as it's going to benefit it financially for its campaign. So, and they are looking of corruption. It's only dealt with black DA leaders in the DA. Yes. When corruption is aligned with whiteness, it has got nothing to do with the DA taking steps against their white leaders in the DA. So they cannot come here and brag about how they grossly deal with the corruption. They only dealt with Patricia de Lille, because the de Lille was part and parcel of the transition of getting rid with black people in the DA.
Grant, do you want to chip in before
I think it needs to be said,
Jordan to respond?
Thank you. I think it just needs to be said that with the city's budget of 50-odd billion rand, that means the city spending 150 million rand a day. That means there are almost that many in transactions that are going through. When we talk about a clean audit, that's less than 10% of all transactions in the year that are being audited. A clean audit actually means nothing, especially in the context where irregular expenditure, fruitless and wasteful expenditure has been climbing since 2015, 2016, and it's still getting more. The Municipal Public Accounts Committee of the city is the most overworked committee in council, because and there's simply not enough members in it. They cannot do their job properly because they are so inundated with investigations into fruitless, wasteful and irregular expenditure. They've never been this busy before, but suddenly in the last 3-4 years, as you say, the wheels have come off. We need to get the city working again. Don't be distracted by fancy words, clean audit. It actually means nothing. Thank you.
Well, there you have it, folks. We've got the ANC and the ACDP saying that clean audits mean nothing. That's their promise to the voters if they take over Cape Town. I will leave it for the voters to decide if they want, if they don't care about clean audits. I think voters do care about them. But also, with respect to you, Fiona and Melikaya, I'm not going to take lectures on corruption from the party of digital vibes and VBS. This is a party that has stolen money from poor grannies in Limpopo, talking to the DA about the party of clean audits. This is a party who has spent 15 million rand on a falling over non-existent stadium, has stolen money from Winnie Mandela's funeral. I mean, how low can you go? Let me make a very clear statement about the way the DA approaches corruption. If there's any person who is found guilty of corruption in the DA, their political career will be over. If that is what happens to the councillor that has been mentioned, it's game over. Which other political party can you say that about in South Africa? Not one. That's the end of the story. Not one. Everything else is noise. Lots of talk about corruption, but they're stealing money from grannies in Limpopo. Lots of talk about corruption, but they're stealing money from Winnie Mandela's funeral. Where we have corruption, we will take action. End of story.
I'm keen to know what if you were to be given the majority to run the city, how will you deal with corruption in the city of Cape Town? Fiona?
We've already started to deal with corruption. The president has set the example of dealing with corruption. You will see that just candidates, that if it's only a case against you, you've not even found guilt, you need to step aside. So we've started to set the scene when it comes to corruption.
What's happening to the Premier of the Eastern Cape?
Let's focus on the metro in the city of Cape Town. It looks like Jordan is afraid to speak about the city of Cape Town because you always run to national, you always run to other provinces. Stick to Cape Town, stick to the high water bills, stick to the fact that people's water is disconnected, stick to the fact that the old auntie can't even buy electricity because debt management is deep dealing with her. Stick to that. That is what our voters want to hear. How are we going to deal with that? But he keeps on taking us to the other provinces. Let's stick to the city of Cape Town.
But
Tell us about this housing projects. Why has it been rolled over for the past 15 years?
We'll get into that.
But if I can just say, if you want to govern the city of Cape Town, we've got to look at what your party has done elsewhere to see what you're going to do in Cape Town. So it is relevant to talk about what you've done in the Eastern Cape and in Johannesburg. Those places are falling apart. Your legacy is one of complete ruin and collapse. It's the only place that works.
Okay, I'm keen to hear from you, Melika and Grant, about how you would deal with the issue of corruption in Cape Town.
What is happening is that as the EFF, first of all, will establish a corruption watch desk within the city, the municipality, where people would be able to report any form of corruption. And then we'll make sure that all whistleblowers are being protected. Because the challenge that we're faced with is the long investigations that are taking place currently with MPEC and every other investigative institution there in the city of Cape Town. Because whistleblowers who are prepared to come forward are scared. And then you would find that corrupt people like Nora Gross, they would be repaid by more council seats and higher levels of candidacy in the list of the DA, which makes it difficult for officials now to come forward with to expose corrupt politicians within the DA. So we need to protect our whistleblowers. And then we're coming to the issue of VBS. We want to clarify that thing. There is no attachment of VBS and the EFF. If there is any attachment with the VBS and the EFF leadership or any other person that is related to the EFF would have been in jail. There have been a number of people that have been arrested for the VBS project. And then there's nothing that is linked with the EFF. They can run that rhetoric as the DA in trying to intimidate the EFF. There's nothing with the EFF. The leaders of the EFF are not even being investigated as we speak. So there's nobody in the EFF that has taken money from the VBS.
Grant?
Look, the ACDP is not comfortable with this in terms of a councillor's name's been mentioned here who is not proven guilty. That's not appropriate to be mentioning a councillor's name who's simply accused. Let's wait until the process is finished before we start handing out badges like she's guilty. However, here's another situation. In the early 2000s, I would say 2006 to 9, there was a councillor who was disciplined by the city's disciplinary committee, found guilty of serious misconduct. Was given a 10,000 rand fine by the city, has subsequently ended up in jail because of that same conduct for signing away houses pretending that she's part of the city and the provincial government when she was doing so. Now that was a clear case of corruption that was poo-pooed by the governing party, the DA, which subsequently went to court and the person was found guilty, and I think the person is still in jail. That was a case which was, it was poo-pooed. It wasn't a serious matter. Council's not going to take it seriously, but it was serious. So what we would like to see is more of that. We want to see when a person is guilty, you can't spend your years on perpetual full paid leave, like there's an executive director who's still on full paid leave. We can't be doing that. We've got to have a zero tolerance approach, and we've got to make sure, as the EFF and other parties have said, is that the whistleblowers must feel free and protected to come forward. We will definitely protect the whistleblowers in Cape Town.
Just to finish a point on how the city's finances are being managed, and to touch or perhaps to take us to a related issue which has been raised by everyone here, the issue of housing. Now, according to the AG report of 2019-2020, there was underspending of 1.3 billion rands in this city. Yet, as everyone knows, housing is a big problem here. Perhaps you can kick us off on this one, Jordan, and talk us through your understanding of the housing situation in the city of Cape Town.
Oh, sure. Do you want me to deal with the AG's report as well?
As well.
Okay, so the amount that you refer to is actually 4% of the budget. So 96% of the budget is spent.
So it doesn't matter.
No. If you could let me finish, it's 96% of the budget is spent, but literally the next sentence I was about to say is it's still not good enough to not spend money. If the money is there, it should be spent as close as possible to every cent of it. And so part of what I will be doing if I am successful on the 1st of November is checking exactly what we need to do to ensure that we get from 96% expenditure to 99% or preferably 100% expenditure of budgets. Now let me say that on housing, your second part of your question, I have started this campaign by making the very firm commitment that we are absolutely in favor of more affordable accommodation, more social housing for Cape Townians in well-located parts of the city. And I've always considered it a source of some regret that the city has allowed itself to be painted as somehow anti-housing, and we've got to turn that around. I'm committed to turning that around. I really believe in this. That is for me empowerment in the true sense of the word, not the ANC's use of that word, but the true sense, empowering people with their own assets, getting them out of poverty, getting them into opportunity. And so the very firm commitment I've made is that what I'd like to see is more well-located city land released faster for development of more affordable housing and social housing for Cape Townians. I've always started, in every time that I've spoken about it, started with that commitment. And I'm happy to be held accountable to that. I've then gone from that and said stage 2 is, if that is my firm commitment as the mayoral candidate, what is the commitment that other levels of government are going to make with the massive pieces of land that they also own and control in the city, and which have not been released, even though there have often been commitments that they will be released? And so I've always coupled those two commitments together. This is mine.
Whose responsibility is it to release that land?
Well, the party responsible isn't here today, but I suppose we can ask the ANC because they're in coalition with Good at the national level. So my question would be to the ANC: what will you do to get your and your coalition partners to release? Your coalition partner, Mrs. DeLille, to release that land that is so well located and which is 72 times the size. This is crucial, Vuyo. 72 times the size, all of the city parcels combined. That's how big this national government-owned land is. It could be an absolute game changer, but it won't be because the ANC and its coalition partners, Mrs. DeLille, will not release it.
Where are the ANC's 56 councillors when a municipality underspends, by 1.3 billion rand? That is supposed to go to housing for the poor. You should be up there.
You correctly say 57 against how much? So, democracy is a beautiful thing, but it can also, when we're in council, you can debate, you can vote against it, but still the majority party will get its way.
But what have you done? In other words, what have you got to show for how appalled you were at the fact that the DA has actually not been spending?
Well, we've gone public, we've gone to the media, we've informed civil society, we've seen civil society coming to the city because we are accountable to civil society. Coming to the city, we have raised our voices about it, and that is why I can speak about this. The projects that has been rolled over for the past 15 years, housing projects has been rolled over. I think we also need to look at our rental stock. I also think we need to start with the city first releasing their own municipal land. Why do you want another sphere of government to come and release land while you also have land to release? But let's start with what is there already. What about the housing projects that is there, that has been there for the past 15 years, that just can't get to conclusion? It was housing projects that was initiated by the ANC 15 years ago when we were still governing. Remember the past 20 years, the first 5 years we governed, and then you've taken over. The past 15 years, those projects has been rolled over ever since. So there is housing projects that can be to completion. to solve the problem.
I'm keen to know, Melikaya, what the EFF would do if you were to take over to deal with apartheid spatial planning.
First of all, is that the issue of the sale of land. We have noted that, especially since there was a proposal in the National Parliament about the change of the Constitution, amendment of the Constitution, as far as to the issue of land is concerned, then the city of Cape Town has started the process of selling all its land to private owners, to private developers. So this has led to them now, in terms of when we talk about special planning, then they will tell us that they do not have land, and therefore the the ANC and GOOD at a national level must provide land. Whilst they are continuing, if you can go back and check the minutes of all the council meetings, there would never be an item that the agenda that passes without an item of the sale of land, that they deliberately do, so that at the end of the day, the land would be in private individuals. We would definitely do away with that. We would expropriate the land that is unused in our municipality to be able to allocate it fairly. And then there are a number of buildings that are owned by the city of Cape Town. It's currently evicting them all over in the likes of Woodstock and other areas, where our people have seen that this building has been abandoned, there's nothing happening here, and have taken an initiative to go in there. But they are selling such buildings to private individuals in order for them to make money. And then after that, they would say, no, they cannot be able to allocate, to bring our people closer to the city. You must see how our people are getting frustrated by living around about 5:30 in the morning and then come back at home around about 8 o'clock in the evening because of distance between where in the townships where we are staying and where they are working. There is enough buildings that are owned by the city of Cape Town, abandoned just like that. And then those are the buildings that we are supposed to convert to affordable housing for our people within the city center, so that we deal away with the special planning of apartheid that has got those congested locations where we call them township, of which there are slaughterhouses of our people, and then also bring them closer to the city.
Grant, so civil society organizations and NGOs have criticized the city of Cape Town for refusing to, identify well-located inner city land to actually house the poor. A process or project that is generally associated with the former mayor, Patricia de Lille, that she began that process. But as soon as she left, it collapsed because there was just no political will to continue with it, because civil society organizations say the government of the city is hell-bent on satisfying or pleasing, pandering to the interests of the people in the leafy suburbs you called earlier. What is your assessment as the ACDP of that particular problem and situation?
We definitely see over years now that there's a very cozy relationship between the DA and the City of Cape Town government and property developers around the city. It's come up numerous times before. In fact, when the stadium was built ahead of the 2010 World Cup, there were companies who were accused and found guilty of collusion. Those same companies subsequently continued to get government contracts from the City of Cape Town after having been found guilty of corruption, of collusion, should I say. They continued to get contracts from the city. In 2016, we had this exact discussion in a Cape Talk debate at the Centre for the Book in Cape Town. And the Deputy Mayor of Cape Town said there are 24,000 land parcels in the city that are suitable for small portions of social housing. He hasn't yet told the council where those are. He hasn't mentioned the size of them, and there has never been any mention about which ones of them have been disposed for social housing. Now that's a problem, because if social housing is on the top of your list, you should be very quick as a government to be saying, we've met the target. Here's social housing. There hasn't been any. What's happened in the CBD now during lockdown is that it's largely the office buildings are now being translated into residential mixed-use facilities. That's a fantastic opportunity. I don't see the city stepping in to saying, well, how can we help you to create some social housing, mixed-use buildings in the city centre? Tafelberg, just around the corner, and see just up the road here, is an absolute disaster in terms of allegations of corruption by the DA in the Western Cape government. And so the list continues. It is about political will, but it's also about the adversarial relationship that this government has in the city with national government. Everything is always their fault, and when there's a success, it's always the city's success. The city never takes the blame for anything, and the city never gives credit where credit is due. Now, as long as you're going to have an intergovernmental relationship that is that adversarial, we're always going to have the situation where the national minister refuses to play ball. Now, it's not appropriate. The national minister should be stepping in. Minister Dillil should be stepping in to make land available. That's obvious, and it's indictment on her and her department that she hasn't. But at the same time, almost, I wonder why, because everything is always national government's fault. When it came to the water crisis, that was national government's fault. It wasn't anybody, certainly wasn't the city of Cape Town's fault. And we can't carry on like that.
Okay. We are talking about the city of Cape Town, where 231 seats are up for grabs in this election, and debating the future of Cape Town are the top four political parties. This debate continues right after this short ad break. Don't go away. Welcome back. This is the Watchdog, and our debate for this week is around the city of Cape Town, and debating these are four parties that are the biggest parties in terms of the current arrangements. I want us to move on now to service delivery. You have the so-called hotspots that are always in the news, notorious for such ills as high crime rates, drug trafficking, but these are also the same areas that are experiencing very, very serious service delivery challenges. You're talking about your Cape Flats, your Mitchell's Plains, your Imizamuye to Joe Slovo, Langa, Nyanga, and Khayelitsha. What do you think lies behind this dire situation in these areas, Jordan?
Poverty lies behind it, but I'm going to come back to that in a second, because I just have to respond to what Melekaya said about land expropriation in Cape Town. What I love about these debates, Vuyo, is that they make the choice so much clearer for the voter. And I want everyone to take note of what Melekaya said about allowing land expropriation without compensation of any piece of unused land, whether it be your back garden or the park opposite your house in Cape Town, versus the DA's pledge that we will oppose land expropriation and stop it from happening in Cape Town with everything that we've got. And that's what we talk about when we say the peace of mind and the sense of security that comes with the DA government, that we will stop terrible, disastrous policies that will destroy our country like that. Okay. Now let me come to the issue of service delivery. On every objective measure, on every measure of governance and service delivery in South Africa, not DA statistics, not DA propaganda, from COGTA, from the National Government Department of Cooperative Governance, from Stats SA, DA governments deliver the best services to poor and unemployed South Africans of any government in the country. And I'm extremely proud of that. The best access to free basic services. This year alone, we will spend 3 billion rand on free basic services in Cape Town. 3 billion rand. That's more than Joburg. That's more than Joburg, who has more than double the population of Cape Town. We're spending more on free basic services than Joburg. So I'm proud of that record. But let me also say, and I've said this everywhere I go in this campaign, there is little consolation in being above average in South Africa when average is set by the ANC. It is so bad that you can't be happy being above average. We're already above average. Everyone knows the DA is above average. So I do feel the pressure. I do feel the need to do even more, particularly in the areas that you mentioned, because there are far too many people still living in poverty, far too many people living without the services they need. So I'm going to spend a lot of time there. That's really where my heart is to see those areas improve. But let's debate on the basis of the facts.
Fiona and Melikai, I mean, the bulk of your votes actually come from these areas. So what is your take? Why are these areas the way they are?
I don't think that the candidate mayor for the DA has been to these areas. Because if you've been to these areas, you would see that there's no service delivery. There's actually sewage all over the place.
Nonsense.
I'm still speaking. You have rental stock that's actually falling apart. In Atlantis, one flat actually caught a fire. And that people were left on the street for weeks, for months, without accommodation because of faulty wiring. Because of the fact that the city is not maintaining the rental stock. That is an example of service delivery. And why the situation we have in Cape Town with the gangs. When we governed, we spent time developing civil society. We had youth skills centers. We invested in flat committees, in street committees, in your neighborhood watch, in your CPF. Because then they feel part of the city's plan. But they don't feel part of the city's plan. Look at the IDP. When we have the IDP, public participation is only a tick of a box. If you receive comments from the community, it's not even incorporated into the budget. So that is where it starts. It starts with, on the Cape Flats, in our rural areas, in our informal settlement, it starts with basic services. You just said that they are proudly providing free basic services. People's water were disconnected for weeks in Atlantis. Queues of old people were standing in front of the municipal building just trying to make an arrangement. They don't take an arrangement if you don't pay something. So is that service delivery? So again, that old auntie need to go home because it doesn't have the 200 rand to make an arrangement. Now she need to go and borrow water. That is the real Cape Town. That is what's happening in the city of Cape Town.
America?
I think Jordan is living in another planet. And he is not living closer to where he's supposed to be rendering the services of being a mayor. Because should he go to Khayelitsha now in Sightsee, right closer to the taxi rank, he will see there. It's been plus minus 3 years now. The sewage has been all over and the kids are playing there. And if you go deeper into Philippi, you will find that there are no roads. If you drive down with Lansdowne Road towards between Khayelitsha and Philippi, you will see that there is no lighting. And that's where cars are being hijacked, and that's where crime is being. If you go to Delft, there's a number of areas where there is not even a street light. A serious challenge. And to him, it's just some kind of a bedside story that is reading or through newspapers. It doesn't live the reality. You have come to these areas such as Imizamoyedu. It's never been there, and you will never go there. You will sit in the city chambers and then decide where the budget is supposed to go. You must go now towards the Platiclof Road. You will find that the road that is not even having a single pothole, it will be resurfaced and be reworked. And that's where the budget is going of the city of Cape Town. They do not care. Why? Because even the budget of the city of Cape Town is racialized. Black people, they would see to it that they don't get anything. And then they frustrate deliberately Africans because they've got that belief that they are here as refugees. And then they frustrate colored people of Cape Town deliberately with one understanding that they know they rely on them for food parcels and giving them these stipends of being Bambanani and being part of the CPF. They don't recognize them as community structures, but it's a way of compensating them as volunteers of the DA that should continue voting for them to be able to get these things. That's how they degrade and they look low at our people because they see them, they don't care about the circumstances facing them. There's serious challenges of crime in Manenberg and even of service delivery. But they don't see Manenberg people as human beings whose livelihood must be upgraded. They see them as the voting cows that must just be utilized to be given food parcels and vote for the DA so that they can remain in power. That's what it's about.
Yeah, Cape Town is a tale of two cities. We all know that. We've all spoken about it ad nauseum. The other city, the city that the tourists don't see, that the investors don't see, is the city that is dramatically negatively affected by an uncaring government who doesn't want to hear, that doesn't listen. The sewage is flowing in the streets. The crime is through the roof. Gangsterism runs rife. Kids have to be told, well, they know from a young age that they must know when they hear gunshots, they've got to duck under the bed, they've got to duck under the classroom table. That's the life that they grow up in. And what is the city doing about it? In terms of cleanliness, street cleaning, potholes, fixing, making sure that the council-owned flats are actually well serviced. Assist with dignity, show respect, and you'll get respect back. But that's not happening. The city would rather, in fact, the ward councillors in those wards, they get around R1 million a year to spend on ward allocations. What do they spend their money on? They spend their money on parties for the seniors. Fantastic. But they don't put up high mast lighting. Right? They're not providing for security. Security should be the number one thing that the ward councillors are considering. Security and cleanliness, making sure that everything is unblocked in terms of the stormwater drains. Make sure those things are working. Give people dignity. Make sure that they can walk to the shop safe, that the aunties don't and the grannies don't have to stand out in the rain sitting in front of the clinic waiting for it to open. Open the clinic earlier for people who have to work. Close it later for people who have to come home from work. Show some respect and you'll get it back. And then we'll have a one city approach.
I'll give you a final word on this.
Yeah, let me just say on spending time in every part of the city. For 5 years, I worked literally every single week in Philippi, in Crossroads, in Philippi East, in Kosovo, in Browns Farm, in Sweet Valley. That was my stomping ground. I know that part of the city inside out. It's a very poor part of the city. I have some wonderful friends there, some champions of service delivery who have poured time and resources.
Why is there no changes there?
That is just not true. There's billions of rands that have been spent in those areas. I think they live in a different city. They deliberately do not see the effort that Cape Town makes. But again, I say to you, that does not mean that everything is hunky-dory in those areas. There is lots of work to be done. There is more resources to be invested there, more basic services to be built up there. But on the objective facts and on my own experience in those areas, there's a huge amount of, just on council flats, the colleague mentions council flats. We've got 57,000 council flats in Cape Town, it's more than New York City, a city many times our resources. 57,000 council flats. This year alone, we've spent 150 million in upgrading them. Now, I know that they know that, because when you go to a council flat, you see the upgrades. But they will never mention that. They will never mention that.
You don't see. Show me where.
Well, you must go and visit them. You clearly haven't been there, because I've spent the last month there.
Speak about all the flats. They've been painted.
They've got brand new windows. They've got new baths and showers. They've got new outside. They've got new outside piping.
That's it for you.
Clearly,
Staircases are falling apart.
Clearly, Mrs. Abrams has never been to a council flat in months.
No, I've been there.
Mrs. Abrams hasn't been there in months. She doesn't know what she's talking about.
Let's move on in the interest of time. Now, criminalizing the poor is many people's take on the unlawful occupation bylaw, together with the updates to the streets, public places, and prevention of noise nuisances bylaws that have been in the news. Over the past couple of weeks, following, of course, the decision of the mayoral council, which was then adopted by full council. Now, a lot of South Africans are asking whether Cape Town is not, criminalizing the poor, and I want to. The judge who ruled against the city after people in District 6 erected tents said some really powerful words, something along the lines of, people do not choose to live in public parking areas out of malice or willfulness, but out of desperation and need. And this was according to Judge Rosheni Ali, who as I said, ruled against the city on this matter. And I'm keen to hear from you just what your take is around these bylaws, whether they make sense, are they necessary, but also to speak to what they do to the dignity of those people who, many of whom are homeless, living under, in bus stops, and I want to start with you this time, Grant.
Well, the epitome of the way the city treats the homeless and street people is what happened in Strandfontein last year. At the start of the pandemic, the homeless people, well, most of them, were rounded up in buses. Some were thrown into trucks. Their possessions were thrown in, and they were bundled off to Strandfontein, into a camp that was still being set up. And the camp was an absolute disaster. It was a humanitarian crisis of note. It was the worst treatment that I've ever seen of Cape Townians. Firsthand, we were there, right? That was the way, and that was the way the city treated them. And then suddenly it was closed, and suddenly they were all sent home, as if it didn't happen. And it cost millions to run that camp for a month and a bit. If that is the way that a policy is going to be implemented, then it's the implementers who need to be brought to book. Sometimes policies, just to get back to your question, sometimes policies are there for a purpose because they plan for various eventualities that might come. And it might be sometimes that you do get a disruptive person who is a street person, who is creating havoc, and who there needs to be an additional step that one can take in terms of bylaws. But often it's about the implementation of it. And if those implementers, the law enforcement officers, the social workers, if they're not trained properly, and if they don't care, and if they don't respect the humanity of the person that they're dealing with, then we're going to get this kind of treatment.
So you don't have a problem with the bylaws, but with their implementations, I want to say.
Well, yes, perhaps. Yes, exactly, sorry. But a case in point, in the city of Cape Town, in Green Market Square, a blind busker, an aged blind busker, was manhandled through the streets. His guitar was broken and he was thrown into a law enforcement vehicle, and then he was given a fine, and a couple of hours later he was debt free. Who possibly treats another human like that, especially not a blind aged man who is busking just to make a living? That happens in Cape Town too frequently.
Malika?
We are against that bylaw. It is very monstrous. It's from people who think very much low of others because of their state of material conditions. That's what the DA is doing in the city of Cape Town. How do you start to imprison the unemployed? A person who doesn't have a home, you take that person to jail with the understanding of doing what? He's going to come out of jail and do what? He's going to go back to the streets. Instead of dealing with the issue of the housing challenge or in the city of Cape Town, to have these people housed, and then we'll have the problem gone away. But why do they do that? They do this because these people are an irritation. And the city of Cape Town is painted as this beautiful city that doesn't deserve these refugees and everything else that are black and are an irritation to tourists. It must be seen as a caring city of all. It is, I think, in their imagination, is even more than heaven itself. But yet, the people that are living in the city of Cape Town are living through hell. For not having anything, if you are unemployed, then the bylaws that are being introduced is that you are a nuisance and therefore you should go to jail for that. Jails that are currently full in terms of capacity, they are just putting a heavy burden on the current taxpayers. Because even those that are in correctional services, they are in the care and in the pocket of taxpayers. Now they are worsening the situation because they know they do not run correctional service and as well as police. That's a responsibility. They will blame now the ANC and the provincial and the national government instead of providing services for our people. It's very clear. We have seen even during the lockdown period, the full lockdown, how the law enforcement was bullying our people around. So the DA is introducing that kind of a police state that will intimidate the poor and be able to, whenever there is something, they must know that they must stay far away from the mainstream because that's where they belong, in the sidelines, and they should be hidden in jail.
Yeah.
We spoke about this in council and we voted against it. We actually said that everybody that votes for this bylaw needs to be criminally charged. Because currently, to be poor in Cape Town is actually being criminal. You know, if the city spends billions on chasing street people, homeless people, arresting them, billions, they could have just take that money and spend it on preventative measures, on empowering youth, on skills development. They don't do that. But that bylaw is only applicable for a certain tail of the city, a certain side of the city. If you are roaming around in Atlantis or in a Nova Park or Mitchell's Plain, they will not pick you up. It's okay. But if you roam around in Sea Point, in Tableview, then the bylaw is applicable. So again, the bylaw is for the minority. It's used for the minority to keep the streets clean, to appeal to them. So that is what the DA is doing. They could have spent all those money in youth development, in skills development, so that we prevent these young people on being on the streets.
Jordan?
But I just want to check. So, are you saying you hate the bylaw, but you want it implemented in Atlantis?
I'm saying to you that you've implemented the bylaw for a specific purpose.
In your leafy suburbs.
For your leafy suburbs.
I hope you can hear how Fiona's contradicting herself. She goes on a rant about
I'm making an example that these bylaws are not implemented in the other areas. It's specifically.
But you don't want it to be.
No. It's specifically.
Well,
that bylaw is created
it's like
for
that time
a
of
certain
apartheid.
part
7
of
o'clock
the
you don't
city.
find black people in town.
And that is the truth. I'm just making an example of where it's implemented.
Ms. Abrams is contradicting herself.
No,
But
I'm
honestly,
not.
I think that Mr. Haskins is the only person who's actually read the bylaw, for listening to what the colleagues have said. The bylaw obliges the city for the first time to actually offer alternative accommodation to that person, Vuyo. Before anything further is done, it obliges the city for the first time in law to offer a further alternative accommodation. So people are so deeply obsessed with their hate for the DA and their race politics that you hear every single answer that Melekaya gives is dripping in racial hatred. They are so obsessed that they can't even see the truth. And the truth is that for the first time, the bylaw obliges the city to offer alternative accommodation. I hope that all of us can agree that it is not dignified, it is not safe, it is not right for any person to spend extended periods of time living on the street. And here we have got the city saying, taking responsibility, saying, we will now do better to offer alternative accommodation through the expansion of safe spaces, through helping with the Give Dignity campaign to fund shelters, and so on. So here you've heard lots of finger pointing, but at least the DA has come forward. This is a very difficult problem. We say this is a tough one to solve, but we've come forward to say we have got a proactive, positive plan on the table. At least we are saying we will spend the money necessary to expand our safe spaces. We will spend the money necessary to actually help get people off the street, because surely all of us agree that they should. You cannot be living on the street for an extended period of time. It is not dignified, it is not safe, it is not right. And that no one else has got a positive plan. They point fingers at the bylaw, but what's the plan, guys? What's the plan? If you don't like our plan, offer your alternative. There isn't one. There's just finger pointing.
Yeah, the ACDP's got a plan.
What's your plan?
We need to, before I say what's the plan, let me just respond.
We don't have a great deal of time.
Just quickly. Did you see the shelters? Did you see the alternative accommodation offered? What if that person doesn't want the alternative accommodation? What happens then? What does the bylaw say happens after that? They are arrested.
But what's your plan?
The plan is that we need to have preventative measures, that we need to focus on youth development and skills development and proper housing. And as the ACDP has said, we need to bring respect back, clean our streets. That is the plan. Because then, if we don't have school dropouts, we will not have homeless people or street people.
Okay, we have indeed run out of time. I'm going to give you 30 seconds each to make your concluding remarks. Unfortunately, Grant, start with you.
If you want, as a ratepayer of Cape Town, to vote in this election, which you must vote, you need to vote for change. Nothing's going to change until you change your vote. We're going to urge you as the ACDP to value your vote and to vote for your values. If you want God-fearing servant leaders who are going to express integrity and respect in everything that we do, in the way we engage with ratepayers, then you must vote for the ACDP. If you want the same bureaucratic insensitivity and uncaring leadership in the city, then don't change your vote.
Malachi?
The people of the city of Cape Town have been living in hell under the Democratic Alliance government. This is the opportunity now for them to vote for a government that will see to it that it puts their needs first, and then we do away with the apartheid arrangement that the DA is advancing with it all efforts. So the EFF is there to make sure that we live in a city that cares, that truly cares for our people. Please vote here.
Fiona?
Yeah, we have a 10-point plan, but I'm just going to take one or two, if I'm allowed three. Firstly, to implement the constitutional mandate, local government has to aggressively pursue local economic development, early childhood development across the city, building on natural endowments and competitive advance and special focus on building townships economy. This includes cleaning up and upgrading businesses and ECD centers in poor working class communities. Is it it?
Thank you very much, Sheldon.
Thank you for the opportunity, Vuyo. There is only one political party, the DA, in South Africa who has a track record of governing well for everyone. We are not perfect, but on our worst day, we are better than any other government in South Africa on their best day. And for that reason, we say that Cape Town works, and we have got lots more to do in Cape Town. We can make it better and safer and cleaner for everyone. And that is why we ask residents of Cape Town to give us the mandate again on the 1st of November to govern this beautiful city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that is how we come to the end of this week's election debate. Do join us again tomorrow evening, 8 o'clock sharp.